be a good president, you have to run an effective meeting, the context of all the members, not just you and your company. And I see you as that person, Brandon.
Big vision is the communication with the members.
And it's really important that we get Brandon on the board. So I think my advice for you is to be you.
And to say 2 years ago when you're like, I'm going to do it, and here we are today.
They need to be communicated with. There is that participation, and they understand the value of the board.
Super high.
I always put you first in the
Hey,
news.
time out. Welcome to this week's sales meeting, and Janet's going to kick us off. Just kidding. So welcome. We're happy to be here. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We've got a multitude of topics. Actually, we got one. We're just going to talk about the election the whole time because I don't think you guys are sick of seeing it in your news feed yet. So no, but seriously, please get out there and vote. Vote for Elie and vote for myself. We would really appreciate your support. What else do you have on that?
We have a ton of stuff on that. So do you want to go to that now, or do you want to get to our amazing lender first?
Let's get to that first, and then we'll go to the lender.
Okay, cool. So if you guys haven't been watching, Facebook is abuzz with all of the weird, nasty, hateful things that are happening during the LVR election because LVR. I'm sorry, LVR. That'll probably be the next myth that's
it's going out on Facebook later.
So
The myth.
so the whole thing is every single one of these elections has had a lot of people have sides to things. They have sides to the topics. They get passionate about it. But I mean, we're not conquering the world here. I mean, we're supporting our industry. But why do you think people get so mean? Why is that? Why do you think it is?
Some
Why are they
people
mean?
Fear?
fear, and some people are just naturally mean. I mean,
the posts that are out there are hateful. I mean, in some cases.
Well, for me, it's about someone just trying to make themselves relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just trying to be the talk of the town, and they don't have any other way to do it. They can't do it through greatness, so they got to do it through.
I said I was sorry.
Well, it kind of leads me to the point that the great candidates, the ones that have really done a great job, aren't ego-driven, and they're not out there pounding their chest. And I mean, Janet, you never once went on Facebook and complained about somebody or said something negative. Not once that I ever saw. And you were a great president. Brandon has never once been on Facebook saying, "Oh, I agree with that myth," any of that. And I think he'll do a great job. But I don't get it. What do you get out of that? It just doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand it either. I think some people, when they get on the board or they run for the board, they think it's their new company.
Yeah.
And they spend all their time and energy in trying to change the board or put in their agenda or whatever it is. And I think all we're there for is to help try to make a difference and represent the members with a vote and some healthy discussion. And at the end of the day, go back and do your business, because all we're trying to do is make our industry a little bit better.
Well, that's the other thing. If they sold houses along the way doing this, they'd be happier people, right? And when I'm serious, I'm surprised at the amount of people that serve in leadership that have sold no houses. Would that scare you if you were voting for that person and they hadn't done a deal?
Well,
Everyone in the audience is saying yes.
It
Right?
definitely doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
I mean, how do you get so passionate about something that you don't even do?
That's the
Doesn't make
point.
sense.
I just don't understand it. And the other thing is, I've served on the board for many, many years, and there are things that we never agreed on. Like literally, even you and I, we have a disagreement about once a week. This morning. I mean, but at the end of the day, I respect everything that you say in most contexts, and you respect what I have to say, you better. But I mean, the whole idea is that we can disagree and still move forward. And a lot of the people there, they get passionate about the fact that if we don't agree, nothing can happen. And that doesn't make sense. Janet, you and I have disagreed many times on issues, and I've seen your point and you've seen mine, and we did it for 10 years together.
I remember one time, Chris, we were both on the board of directors, and there was an issue I was very passionate about on one side, you were on the other. And after the board meeting, after the board meeting, you and I are out in the parking lot having a very heated discussion. But
she beat the hell out of me too.
I walked away still liking you. We've served on the board together for 10 years. Hey.
But I do have to sit between them.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you have to make a vote based on what you've seen, and hopefully you've already voted, so the question's over for you. So please, every single vote will count in this election, guaranteed. I remember during my last election, I went around the office and I got 10 people to vote. I won by 8 votes. And the question is, if I hadn't done that, every one of those votes would have mattered. And so I think that's important too.
Well, I think I told you this yesterday, but my team meeting is on Mondays, and so the very first part of my team meeting was everybody brought their laptops, and I made them all go in and vote while we're sitting there. So I think it's super important that you vote. If you don't know who to vote for, contact Janet. I mean, she's going to help you.
I'll tell you.
With exactly who she thinks. And if you don't know this, there's a specific group that is not working in your best interest, and voting this year could fix that. So I don't know how.
Let's talk about that. I'm gonna talk about that because I'm tired of the click comment and people are like, oh, you're just picking sides. But here's what's happening. A group of people have decided that they want a specific agenda, and not that the agenda has any like actual items. Like we've heard people say, I want to lower your dues. We've heard people say, I want to stop travel. We've heard them say, I want to change the makeup of the installation so we don't have those things. And that's the campaign promise a group of people made, but yet many of them have been on the board 3 or 4 years and have never changed any of it, right? But the only click that I see...
Sounds kind of political to me.
Right? The only click that I see, and Janet was probably... You were the most vocal president to a group of people that stood in opposition because you didn't let it fester like many of us did. I was best meeting I've ever been to, by the way. She took away everyone's cell phones. They put them up on a wall. She walks into the room and laid down the law. I mean, without any rhyme or just went in and told them, right? But everyone knew where they stood with Janet. And I think the whole point is with this group is they're doing everything they can to obstruct any type of momentum that they don't agree with. That's what I don't like. A board has to move forward, whether it's this way or that way, it doesn't matter. They literally want to stand in opposition of anything that they didn't decide on.
Well, we seen that come out yesterday in the whole...
You got to talk louder.
Wow,
they're all saying they can't hear you.
Really? Well, I'm sorry.
They hear Chris fine, and he's like clear over here, so just speak up.
You can just move the mic in front of you, obviously, because I'm doing a good job.
You definitely won't be able to hear me then.
So now I forget. No, I'm just kidding. So I think we seen this come out yesterday, right? Like we seen somebody go and publicly post a bunch of crap. I probably shouldn't say it that way, but quite honestly, it's ridiculous that somebody would do this. The point is that this is your livelihood. This is how we all make our money. Now, we understand that many of the board members don't make their money this way. I don't know how they make their money, but the bottom line is we need it to run in a way that is profitable for everybody. And running on a campaign of, well, I'm going to lower your dues. Well, you know what? If you lower my dues $100 or $200, it's not going to make a difference in how much money I make. I'm looking for services. I'm looking for things that are going to cause my business to make more money and not save $100 or $200 a year. That doesn't even make that's a weak campaign as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I will just say this, sitting on the board, Todd, that the topic that was made as a campaign promise last year, the topic of lowering the dues has never even been brought up at a board meeting.
It was a way to get in, right? It was political. Yeah. For me, it's raise the dues. Let's raise the dues.
I did that once.
Brandon, let's raise the dues when you get in, right? I mean, we're going to eliminate some of the people who aren't in the best interest of real estate in my mind. It's why I can't be, this is why I can't be on the board, by the way. I don't know how.
We got an audience laughing at that one.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
No new taxes. All right. I think, so hey, go vote because you're the only ones that can make a difference if you haven't voted. You can't figure it out. Go see your broker. We'll help you figure out A, how to do it, and B, who to do it for.
Well, and if you think about it, Chris says he won by 15 votes. That's
8
votes, yeah.
Even sadder, 8. That means that it's like a shift of 4, right? 4 people jump.
4 people change and it's over. So that's a big deal. So every vote counts.
Yeah. So let's talk about a different, more exciting thing, and that's production. And believe it or not, today is exactly on the nose 100 days from now to the end of 2020. And so if you knew that you had 100 days left in the year, and forget about all the horrible things that have happened, the COVID crisis, the murdering hornets, I keep coming back to those because I don't know where they're at, but they're out there somewhere.
Only in Washington. It didn't happen here.
But what else did we have happen this year? There was a whole list of those type of things, and I can't remember any of them other than the COVID crisis.
Quite honestly, who cares?
Right?
I mean, I'm so over Oak. I had a lender, not Shelley, of course, but I had a lender on a listing. I was the listing side. tell me they couldn't get a loan done in 40 days because of COVID. I'm like, dude, that was last February. Okay, that's over. If you haven't figured out COVID by now, I can't really understand how you're still in this business. But yeah, you got 100 days left.
100
What
days.
does that mean?
So the whole point is that if we talked last week about the fact that we're doing business planning and services in October. We're doing services and database in October. We're doing business planning in November. And so that means that now you have 100 days to plan for. And if you work your butt off starting today, and you work as hard as you can for the next 100 days, you're going to have a great first quarter, you're going to have a great second quarter, and you're going to be above all the other agents that are out there thinking of all the things that are keeping them from success. But it's what you make of it, just like the LVR election.
LVR.
It'll be GLVR as long as I want it to.
And that's Bishop's Corner.
So Chris, what do we do in the next 100 days? Like, what should we really be thinking about in the next 100 days?
So the one thing I hear from a lot of people is, where do I prospect? What am I going to do to generate business? I got to tell you that business itself is there. There are so many transactions happening. We have agents that are door knocking still. Mike Yaruski is the one I think of. He is out there hitting doors every day, and he's taking listings. He's taking 2 to 3 listings a month from door knocking. But yet I have agents that are like, well, I don't want to door knock. Now look at me. I have not been out walking neighborhoods. I guarantee you that. But if you wanted to cold call, there are a number of calling services, and we have a number of agents that are in each of the offices. They're making phone calls for hours every single day. I mean, imagine this, Todd. You go in for 3 hours and make phone calls. You spend 2 hours doing lead follow-up. You go on 1 or 2 appointments. That sounds like a full-time job, right?
Sure.
And if you did that for 100 days through the end of the year, would you be successful?
Yeah, you'd have a great Christmas.
Yeah. You would have an amazing new year too.
So for the agents that are still still are wondering, is this business really as productive as we often say it is? Like, what are some of the indicators of how successful or how much business is happening month over month? We had a recording yesterday. Thank you, Shelley, by the way. Got that. It was actually Tony, but Tony is through you, so I thank Shelley because Tony.
You're
anyway, and we got an email from escrow at 4:00 that said that the recorder's office has notified us that they are so backed up today in recordings that they're probably not going to get ours recorded. Guys, if the recorder's office is so backed up that they're proactively letting escrow officers know that they're not going to get to their recording that day, business is hot. It's happening. They're recording a ton of stuff right now.
That's the second time this month, actually, because I think we missed a recording because they were so far behind that they couldn't get in the recording that day. So,
do you remember back in 2006 and 2007 when values were increasing dramatically in every subdivision every single month? I've been looking at multiple subdivisions that I farm, and each of those farms has had a massive increase in value month over month in this last quarter. And so what it tells me is that a lot of people that were on the fence, your entire database. So if you have a database that you've been keeping in touch with, or one that you don't have that you should, or get a phone book. I mean, all of those things are answers. Those people are literally getting increased values. And we've never seen a market with this much equity in the marketplace. I mean, refis are going like crazy. Everyone's trying to get lower rates, but that just tells you when there's money and you can motivate someone about the money, you're going to have a lot of sales. And so it's just a question of how willing are you to actually go out and have those conversations. And let me be honest. Many people don't know what to say. So if you don't know what to say, what should you do?
Go to script practice.
Yeah, we have script practice. We have managers that are here that will help you. There are other agents in the office that you can role play with, but there's a ton of business.
So
and don't give it to Zillow.
So let me ask this question. So what does an agent do if the results in the last quarter for them haven't been what we're talking about? What could they do?
Something different.
There you go. That's exactly
right.
Write down everything that you do on a daily basis and stop doing that.
Yep.
And do something different.
Pivot.
Make a change.
Just like the Friends episode.
Just be willing to make a change. And guys, I got to tell you, it's a small change. It's not some dramatic. I mean, it's just a small little change. It's a little tweak. I've used this example before, but you know the old radios that weren't digital. You had to tune them in, right? I mean, the
What's a
difference
radio?
between
What's a phone?
great music and not was just a small little tweak, and that's exactly what changing your business is about. It's making one small change.
So we brought up coaching for this exact point. We created a coaching program so that agents that didn't know what to do could get a coach to help them understand it. And real estate has always been extremely simple. It's just not easy because it requires action on your part. My whole thing is that when I sit down with an agent and we look at their daily activity of what they're doing, I hit one point. Highlight everything in green that actually makes you any money. And I will tell you the most eye-opening experiences when they actually tell me what is green and I actually explain why it is or it isn't. It's amazing that the 5 or 6 hours of work that they have goes down to 30 minutes. And then you say, wow, I'm only working 30 minutes on anything that makes money. You can understand why you're not making any money.
Yeah.
And to be successful in this job, just like any other career, no one would pay you for a job where you don't do anything profitable, right? And so you have to have 3 to 4 hours in your day dedicated to money-making activities. What are those? Prospecting, actually getting on the phone, making phone calls, calling your database, calling people you don't know, door knocking, right? Farming, like actual sending mailers, putting them together. Any of those things that you're going to do to make money, that's the idea. It's a green activity.
It's weird. It's called work.
Work, yeah.
Right?
But here's the other thing. I noticed there are a ton of people that have done those activities. They've got all of these contacts. They've got databases full of names, phone numbers, and email addresses of people that communicated with them. And they take that and they get rid of it and they go get a new list.
Yeah, let's try something new.
So it's called lead follow-up. That's where you make all the money. Someone says, here's I have a phone list, right? There are all these numbers, and then the person answers, and we don't have a great conversation, right? You've had that happen. And so, not just you specifically, but you go through that contact,
So sour about
and-
this morning.
It's kind of like this
and,
conversation.
and you hang up. But what do you know about the number?
It's a good number. There's
works.
somebody
It
on the
works,
other
that's
end.
right.
Yeah.
So build a relationship with them. You know,
So
go
let's
back.
follow up on the call a month later.
Yeah.
You have to have a system for that. You can't. Nobody's smart enough to remember every number they have to follow up on in the next 30 days. You have to have a system. It's called a database. We can keep kicking the dead horse if we want to. We've talked about databases for months now.
Well, and I just want to say one other thing on that topic. I want to issue an invitation to anyone who would like to come, but generally 3 days a week. Todd has a huge team. He just kind of sits up in his golden castle. And
Ivory Tower.
thank you. That's what I was
It's so
looking
pretty.
for.
I
Ivory
call
Tower.
myself the orchestra director.
And then he has
He's
this
tone deaf, though.
team that actually works. And I love the fact that they
But
work.
Todd doesn't.
I don't know.
I love the fact that they work out of my office because they bring so much synergism to the whole office. But they sit in the very front of my office. There are couches, there are comfy chairs, they're at the computers, they have their laptops, they have their phones, and they are cold calling. And if you don't have the nerve to, in front of a group, pick up a phone and make a phone call, come for 2-3 days and just get your coffee, sit on the couch, and listen to them. And you will pick up
So true.
much in the way of calling, and maybe do a little bit to get over the fear. And you will learn scripts too. But you're invited. Please come.
I would say don't just sit on the couch and drink your coffee.
Yeah.
Get involved.
Well, and listen.
Right?
Jump in.
The other thing is we have all kinds of programs that we put together from the apprenticeship to the pods to the coaching. All you got to do is engage.
Yeah,
all you got to do is come in. And the first step would be not saying, hey, I want to sign up for coaching. Whatever. Set an appointment to come in and sit down with one of us and go over your business plan for next year. Start talking about it. What do you want? Where do you want your business to go? Because we can actually help you. And all this stuff sounds great, but it can be overwhelming if you're just saying, okay,
Absolutely.
now I got to do this. I got to prospect, I got to follow up, I got to get a contact management system. But if you work with us, we can actually help you take step by step and break that down and get productive.
It will be overwhelming until you finally say, I need help. And I think the whole point is I've had Zoom meetings every single day, and I'm happy to have one with anyone to talk about their business because that's what we're all here for. I mean, it's what makes the world go around for us. And I think that if you really want to change your life, the best thing you could ever do, and I've done this many times, we've done this many times, the 100 contact challenge, right? Sit down for one day and commit that you will not leave the office until you have physically talked to 100 people and prove through that 100 people that you can't get business from it. It's impossible. You
I'm
could
out.
be brand new, not know a script, and talk to 100 people, you'll get something.
Yeah. So when I do it, I start on the East Coast, and I work all the way to Hawaii. because it takes that long to actually talk to 100 people. And you need numbers. It's a challenge, right?
It's a challenge.
But we already talked about that. If you're going to do something different in your business in the next quarter, you have to do something different.
Yep.
Here's something that's just something different.
It works every time.
Let me commit my team. And if any of you are watching, you can text me later. But if you go into the office, and half of my team is in Summerlin, half of my team is in Green Valley office. And yeah, they come in every morning. They do lead gen. They do some lead follow up. If they're there and you're there, they will work with you. Just let them know that you specifically came today to listen and to get involved. And there isn't a single person on my team that will push you away. You can sit
except for Todd.
Yeah,
You can't get in the ivory tower. But if you do, he'll help you.
the door's locked. But no, kidding. But so just you can anytime. So honestly, any morning. If you want to get real involved, come to the Green Valley office on Monday mornings, because the entire team is in Green Valley on Monday mornings, and that's quite a party. So they'll help. They'll get there by 9. If they get there past 9 o'clock, they have to bring me a bagel. So they're always there by 9 o'clock, so they don't want to go to Einstein's. And it's not.
That's a level of commitment, right?
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge level of commitment. And even if you don't want to drive to Green Valley, do that at any of the offices. I mean, come in and start prospecting. There are people all over that will do it. Now, if you don't want to come into the office, we have Zoom groups, and you could start a Zoom group. You could pick 3 people to say, listen, let's commit to each other to get our business going. Let's Zoom together and do some script practice and role play. Anything's better than nothing.
True.
Do it.
Do something.
All right, let's change gears because we beat that horse to death, like you've said. So I got a number of items that have come up as broker issues that we've had in the offices that we want to talk about, and now you want to go to Shelley. Okay.
Now it's me.
I had that teed up perfectly.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Take it away, Shelley.
Yeah.
Yay, Shelley!
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Actually, so speaking of business planning, I actually went away this weekend to do some reflection. It's been a year that I was part of the Shield Made In experience. One of the things that I did is to look backwards in time to see what the last, not just 90 days, but really the last 3 quarters have looked like for me from a business standpoint, from a family standpoint, financial, spiritual, all that other stuff. But speaking to business and business planning, I did the same thing. I listed out these things that I wanted to implement, things that I saw actual progress from, things that I felt good about as I did them, like the virtual open houses, the direct mailing, the cold calling, and things that I actually saw results from. And that's what I'm taking now to move myself forward for the next 90 days and then into the next year, because I can reflect on what happened. But if we never take that time to stop, to say, to pause, because I think that's a big part of our craziness, right? Is we never take that moment to literally just stop and pause to see what we're really great at, because not everybody may be good at prospecting, not everybody may be good at doing virtual open houses or door knocking, whatever the case may be. Whatever that is, take it and run with it. And literally, when I say this is like to sprint, this is your sprinting to the end of the year. If we mess up the whole first 3 quarters, this is it, right? For us to finish the year strong. Anyways, getting into lending, what I do want to share with everyone is that as we came into COVID, a lot of programs went away. So we lost our jumbo programs. We lost the home equity lines of credit like within the first week. The moment they said shut down, those investors pretty much walked away from financing. I'm happy to say that home equity lines of credits, a piggyback home equity line of credit, is making a comeback. We do have an investor that'll go up to 90%, and now we have 2 that'll do 85%. So you'll do a first at 80%, a second at 5%, and then the borrower will either put 15 to 10% down. As well, we now have expanded our jumbo programs. We have a 10% down payment jumbo financing. You do have to have 720 credit scores, but to have a 10% jumbo world up to $1 million, when they were literally walking away from the table. Wells Fargo pulled out, I think, the first day of us announcing the shutdown, is encouraging, right? That the market is starting to feel, that area of space is starting to feel more comfortable with that. And then the last thing, you guys are all so serious.
Well, you're yelling at us. I'm just waiting to see what happens.
I want to make sure you can hear me. So on Wednesday, the Fed announced that they were going to leave rates low through 2023 to 2024. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that when the Fed announces they're going to keep those rates low, that is not our mortgage rate. So I actually got calls from clients who were like, hey, so rates are going to be low until 2023, right? I'm like, no. Our short-term rates, which are like your credit cards, adjustable rate mortgages if you're doing those, your car loans, your short-term loans are intended to be low according to the Fed. But Fed rates and mortgage interest rates are complete opposite. So if you're hearing that from your clients or you yourself thought that, just know that the misnomer of us going all the way out to 2023 or forever with lower interest rates is not going to happen. So making sure that that message is out there to everyone. Outside of that, if you need help with business planning or anything from a lending standpoint, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of our loan officers. We're always here to help you guys, not just save your loans and close your
So
deals.
I have a question for you from Patricia.
Yeah.
What is the lowest credit score anyone is lending on for VA?
We actually can do 580. It's just you're going to be rate driven off that. So 600 is when they went all the way back up to 620 or 660, they've come back down. 600, you can get a pretty decent rate. 580, you're going to be paying discount points.
Well, very good.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
Back
Yeah.
to 580.
Now,
Yeah.
now work your transition again.
Are you
Yes.
sure?
Wait.
And now back to you, Chris.
Oh, awesome. So actually, it's perfect timing for this because we want to talk about closing and possession. And so I notice a lot of the times that agents get confused between when the lender says we're closing, when the escrow officer says we're closing, and what recording actually means, and then the conversation of what possession is, right? Taking the property over. So from a lender standpoint, what is closing for you look like?
So funding for me is closing. So funding for us is when we officially send the wire out. So confirmation is Clark County saying you are now confirmed. You can exchange.
Sure.
I never really partake in the possession piece of it, although I'd love to. But honestly, from a lending standpoint, we rarely see the confirmations. It's always to the agents. So we always alert our agents, hey, we've sent out our wire. We've officially funded. When the money is on the table, we're done.
And I think the point of this conversation is the fact that the consumer hears closing, right?
Yeah.
And for the lender, they say closing as we've sent your wire and you've signed your docs. For escrow, they say closing, and recording confirmation is when it's been sent down to the recorder's office, they've accepted it, and they've recorded it. You just had one kicked back that was sent back after they had got it, and it didn't hit the recording. So you can even have them on like Friday, the end of the month, with the recorder's office packed up like it is. It could go down and it said it's sending out to record and not record. And so you have to wait before you say that my client owns this property when you get a recording confirmation from escrow with conforming docs, meaning the docs have been stamped and they've been recorded at the office.
That goes right back to the definition of close of escrow in the RPA. It just says once it's recorded, that's the close of escrow. And we have problems with agents at times, or the clients, the sellers not wanting to give them the keys because they haven't received their funds yet.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get your funds until after it records and it closes. So the seller's kind of the last to.
So can I share a quick story about that?
Sure.
Well, you guys just stole my topic, so go right ahead.
I didn't
Chris.
steal it. You gave it to me to talk about.
No, I gave it to you. That's what you wanted me to talk about. Okay, go ahead.
Chris, you're just
Go
not
ahead.
doing anything. I'm sorry.
He's got diarrhea of the mouth.
The reason last meeting she had more recorded time than I did. So I had an agent worked for me a number of years ago, and he had a client that physically couldn't afford to move out of the property. So what he did is he told him, hey, no problem, we'll go ahead and record the property. We'll have your money sent to you, and then we'll get you out. The only problem was he had no agreement, right? And so he didn't put in an agreement in place, even though we told him you have to have a possession agreement on how the property is going to transfer because you're passing the recording date. What it means is the seller no longer owns it, the buyer now owns it, and they're living in the house. It's a holdover. And so he comes in to tell me this, and he did it to help his client out because he didn't know. He was a newer agent, even though we'd explained it, he'd been through classes. And so I had to inform him that he has to go over and get that client out of the house immediately because he's trespassing at this point. And he says, okay, I'll let him know. And so about 2 or 3 hours go by, and he calls me. And I hear these sirens in the background. And I said, Rich, what's going on? And he says, well, we're on the way to the hospital. And I said, hospital? And he says, I went over to tell the client that he had to move out and he had a heart attack and we're on the way to the hospital. He says, but the good news is the buyer's willing to give him extra time because of the story and what happened. But I mean, that was horrific. That was my nightmare day in real estate. And now looking back, I mean, it's, oh my God, the guy's in an ambulance going to the hospital.
Did he live?
He lived, yeah,
So
absolutely.
the moral
He
of the
was in
story is
property.
it always works out.
It always works out. But the whole
The
point
fires
was,
always burn out. Don't
they
worry
do,
about it.
they do. But you got to have an agreement between the parties when those things happen. But right when that property recorded, the seller no longer owns it. It's now the liability of somebody else. And anything they do to the home floods. We've had that happen many times. Home catches fire. I mean, there are liability issues that have to be worked out. And as soon as it records, they own that property. It's theirs.
Well, it's pretty commonplace to know that as soon as it records, anything in the house at that point now belongs to the buyer.
Good.
So now you got a seller in the house that's got all this stuff, right? And I understand that when Chris says you have to have an agreement, it's a written agreement. It's not a verbal agreement. It's written between buyer and seller. It's not between you as an agent and your client. It's between the buyer and the seller because they're the ones that are under contract. So.
Can I throw out this is as far as the
You've
agreement
already
on
had
the
your time. You've already
rent.
had your time. I've told
Yeah,
you.
it's Janet's turn.
Sorry, Janet. The rent back, because I get a lot of questions on that as well. So when they have a seller who's going to stay and they put that in the agreement, and so they always come to us and say, is that going to be okay? So it's okay as long as it doesn't exceed 60 days for an owner-occupied property. I just want to throw that out there. So as long as it goes to 59 days of them a rent back for 59 days, and then on that 60th day they are going to occupy, then that will be acceptable for owner occupied. So some people are like, I don't even want to show it to you. I'm like, no, it's okay that we see the rent back because it's part of your addendums, right?
Yep.
It's an addendum or counter.
Hopefully.
Unless they take a ride in an ambulance, they're out.
Well, the other thing is, if you really want to get specific on closing, like remotes and keys and mail keys and all that stuff, you can get specific in an addendum, and as long as the other party agrees to it. I want 4 garage remotes, because if there's 4 garage, you could say that. I want 2 door keys. I had an agent do that on a luxury property because there were 4 garages. And of course, what would have happened is they just give them one remote and say, here you go buy the others. And a garage remote's $50 a piece, right? So she got extremely specific in the addendum of what her client wanted, and she had all the transfer information listed in there. You could do that if you want to take the time, but the point is you coordinate closing. I mean, that was your great topic, Janet. I put here Janet's great topic.
But on that, we've been on the other side of that where somebody was very specific on the amount of door openers and everything that they wanted, and the agent didn't read the agreement and go over that with the seller. So make sure you're reading those too, because at the end, the agent ended up buying garage door remotes.
So, and I also want to talk about, because we've had an incident with this where there are table closings, which most of the country has. Everybody sits at a big table. You move papers all around the table. You sign this one, you sign this one, you sign this one. Now here's my check. You give me the keys. Nevada is not that way. As you know, we are an escrow state. But your sellers and your buyers, I've seen it on both ends, may not understand that. Particularly if you're dealing with an out-of-state buyer who may have bought several properties over the years. Say, are you used to an escrow state or are you used to table closings? Because we had a situation where the sellers had both lost their jobs, put their house on the market, moved back to the Midwest, and the door was on a code. And the sellers were so paranoid, they were changing the code every single day. So the agent didn't even know the code to get in the door. And so we have confirmation. By the way, confirmation came at 5:30 yesterday from title that it had recorded. So the buyer's agent wants to get in the property, and the seller's agent's going, my sellers won't give me the code. And the seller said, we're not giving you the code until we have our money. Well, they're not getting their money when they're in the Midwest, and we're here, and the thing got confirmed confirmation at 5:30. So this was a 25 minute phone call with me last night, talking to the sellers in Ohio, explaining the whole process of this is what closed means. You no longer own the house. Yes, you don't have your money. I understand that. But you should know enough to know, because the sellers told me, I've bought and sold 4 houses and I always had my money the day it recorded. And I said, you should know enough about the wiring system and the bank system that there's no wire going to you at 5:30. in the afternoon. Now, it all worked out. I did have the seller laughing at the end, but it was a very, very tense situation. A new agent, she was hysterical. The other agent, the buyer's agent, very experienced agent from another company who has completely taken advantage of the new agent. So be sure, if you're dealing with people who have not bought and sold a home in Nevada, that you ask them, are you used to table closings? Or are you used to escrow closings? Because most of the country does do table closings.
So that's called disbursement, right? When the money actually gets sent to and that's usually, doesn't title have a set amount of time to actually disperse?
Some do it 2 days later.
Okay.
And that's where the closing packages come out.
Right.
Just depends on the company. Let's continue on that same communication train of thought to HOA docs and demands. So if you're the listing agent and your client lives in an HOA, and if there's 2 HOAs, you need to be upfront with the conversation to say, you have to, by law, provide your client, the buyer, with HOA docs. And you, Mr. Seller, usually have to pay for those by law. And we're going to order those as part of the closing, not when we get the appraisal or when we do the inspection, but contractually 2 days within opening of escrow. And so I'm letting you know that you need a credit card to order those with, or cash, because we've got to pay the HOA company for it. It doesn't go to us. And we need a demand. And most people don't know the difference between docs and the demand. We didn't have demands 15 years ago. We didn't use them like that. But a demand is a statement about what is owed in the property and what all of the fees are. So special assessments, monthly fees, all of those type of things. And that also costs several $100s. The biggest problem we're seeing is that agents are waiting, and now they have a quick close of escrow and they still don't have the docs out. And so now your client's paying rush fees, which rush fees can be anywhere from $100 to $250 each. So you can imagine how upset a client would be to find out, I got to come up with $500 that no one told me about. And now because you didn't tell me, I have to rush it, and that's another $500. You can understand how they'd be so upset about it. So make sure that you're communicating that, because if it's in an HOA, you have to have it.
Yeah, this is part of your conversation at your listing appointment, right? I mean, this is talked about long before it's needed.
On your net sheet.
Could be on the net sheet.
I've heard of those.
Well, and I just want to say I had another situation this week, same thing, where we are 3 days away from closing, and the buyers, my agent was the buyer's agent, does not have the resale package. And she's talked to the agent on the other side, and she's like, don't worry, we've ordered it. You'll get it before closing. Well, now the buyers really wanted a house, and they really wanted to move in. But technically, they could have held up the entire closing for a good 5 days before they decided to close, since they didn't have the HOA package. I knew the other agent, and she called me. And she said, you have got to tell your agent to back off. She said, I know what I'm doing. I can close the transaction in my sleep, and you know that. And I said, well,
wake up and get it going.
The RPA says your seller needed to order the resale package within 2 days of opening escrow. I know what it says, and they're going to get it before we record. And I said, well, no, actually the contract says that they have 5 days after they receive it to back out if they want to. You could be hurting your seller. She's like, if they want to cancel, they can cancel. But I know what I'm doing. I'm like, no, you really don't. So, and then she finally said, well, I wasn't sure it was going to appraise, and I didn't want my sellers to spend the money till we knew it was going to appraise. As a matter of fact, it did not appraise. It came in $10,000 low. The other agent told my sweet little agent, well, my sellers are not going to sell at this price. The seller said, okay, it is what it is. We'll take it. And so it was after the sellers said, yes, we will sell for the appraised value, that she ordered the resale package.
Crazy.
So read your contracts.
By the way, we have a new state law that makes the package good for 90 days. So,
and I told her that too.
Yeah. All right, so switching gears one more time, due diligence periods. And this is one that you brought up, and we're in one of the hottest sellers markets we've been in a lot of years. And so now we're seeing people get aggressive with their offers to get them accepted. And how many times can you get beat out, on your offer before you really start to, change your perspective? So share with us due diligence periods, yes or no?
So I have an agent that so think about this for a minute, had a home in Summerlin that went on the market on Thursday, and he had 75 showings.
Wow.
In a 2-day period. He basically lived at the house.
It's like an open house.
The seller insisted that he be at the home.
No.
So he 75 showings.
It's tenant occupied.
17 offers.
Chris, somebody
what
said
was-
seriously.
17 offers out of 75 showings. And one of the offers came in and they had waived their due diligence period. And that was concerning for me.
Sure.
Now, I know that there's going to be an argument on both sides, and I'm totally cool with that. That's actually like that. But is it in your client's best interest, if they're the seller and or if they're a buyer, to either waive due diligence period to get their offer accepted, or is it in the seller's best interest to accept an offer that doesn't allow a due diligence period? And so that's my question.
Yeah. So I'll give you my take and go around because I
Could
can't.
Janet go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, no, it's not, because if there were a problem that might have been discovered during the due diligence period, but the seller wasn't aware of it, and they had marked they were not aware on their SRPD, and then right after the buyers move in, they find this situation, go, you had to have known that, and according to the SRPD, I'm going to sue you for treble the damages to repair it. So it protects both the buyer and the seller. I've had another instance where property closed, the sellers were going, new buyers were going to remodel the kitchen. They pulled out the dishwasher. The whole back wall behind the dishwasher was black with mold. But the seller honestly did not know it. Now, how many of you have ever pulled out your dishwasher and checked behind for mold? I've lived in my house for 20 years. I've never done it.
Just did that
So if
last
there's
night.
mold, I don't know about it. Well,
Monday
Supposed to do that every.
are you supposed to do that?
That's
So
in my
here's
database,
the
in my
deal.
CRM.
This
It
due
reminds me.
diligence period not only protects your buyer from surprises, but it also protects the seller from some what could be costly situations.
Well, here's the thing. When we fill out our E&O application every single year, one of the questions is, what percentage of your homes have home inspections? Why do you think they ask that?
Because they want to know the liability clause.
Exactly. If you're doing more home inspections, you're less likely to get sued after the fact. It's a home inspection, the home inspection, a home warranty, and your seller's disclosures. Those are 3 items that they really want you to get. So much so that our policy says if you have those on all 3 of those on your transaction, they actually waive your deductible.
No, it's huge.
So that's big because there's going to be less of that. The other thing is if you buy or sell your own property and you don't have those 3 things, it is not covered under E&O.
So tell me the 3 things again.
It's seller's real property disclosure, which is required by law,
Right.
a home warranty, and then the home inspection. So those 3 things will protect you a lot from time down the road. So for me, if I was representing a seller and somebody came, I would explain that to them, that by giving them the opportunity to actually go through the home and inspect it, you're going to have a better chance of a smooth transaction in the end and not having to deal with this after the fact.
Yep.
Same thing with the home warranty. 9 times out of 10, whatever happens after you leave is covered under a home warranty and you don't have to hear about it again.
Yep.
So yeah, it may seem like a stronger offer, but down the road, I think you could come up with other issues.
I think the whole thing is that I don't dictate due diligence. The buyer does. When I go to the buyer and I say, you want to buy this home? They say yes, right? There's a whole group of questions in the offer. And we know what happens is the agent doesn't really communicate to the buyer on all of these things. And so they just start putting in dates. Technically, it's my client submitting an offer to the other party. And I think the thing is that if I put in 2 days, what would you think is the listing agent compared to everyone else that put in 10? It's better, right? I am only asking for 2 days. I need to get the offer accepted. I'll get the inspector because I've already called him. He knows where the house is. He knows we can get there tomorrow. I've already set an appointment with him in the hopes that you're going to accept my offer. And if I put 2 days and he gets it back to me right away, I still had a due diligence period. But if I ever had a client that said 0, and I've had contractors as clients, they're like, I've already seen the house. Those are usually the deals that have the most issues, but they say, I'll waive my due diligence because in some states, they don't have one. And so they'll say, yeah, I'll waive it completely. If that ever happened, you need to have a written conversation where you said to the client, I need you to understand that all of these things that Janet outlined could happen to you. And I still need you to confirm in writing, because my broker's a stickler about this, that you're okay with moving forward on that. And I would even suggest you take it a step further and get a release sign, because at the end of the day, when they pull out the dishwasher and there's mold, they get amnesia. Well, I only did what you told me to do.
That's
and that emails the whole thing.
That's a fact. The other thing is be careful. Don't be the one recommending that to your client. If your client actually said, I want to waive that, that's a different thing. Have a disclosure on that. But don't be the one that recommends that, because after the fact, they're going to go, well, you told me to do that. The other thing is we had somebody that was recommended to have a home inspection that didn't do the home inspection. And 2 years later, we're dealing with the complaint now with the Better Business Bureau and everything else saying, my agent told me not to get one.
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
The other side of that is the reason why the seller fills out the SRPD and not you is exactly Janet's point, where later on down the road, because the agent sticks their nose where it doesn't belong and they're telling them what boxes to check, the seller is the one who's telling them their knowledge. And if the seller doesn't know, the seller's not liable. But if someone else is dictating what's going on because they know or they don't know, you now incur the same liability and the same parameters that the seller would incur. And so that's why it's important that you as the agent, you're just there as an advisor, right? They make all the decisions and you should not be filling out stuff for them. We've had an offer the other day where it had 0 appraisal, 0 days, 0 loan contingency, and 0 due diligence. The agent sent it over, brand new agent from another company. And so agent brings it in and says, wow, they waived everything. And I said, well, I doubt they did that.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. And so the question came into me and she said, well, should I go back and tell the agent? And I said, that's an interesting scenario, right? I like to give the benefit of the doubt, but I don't give away the secret. I just want to confirm that everything in your offer is correct. I noticed a few blanks in the offer. Is this the way you want to present it? I usually send that email over just so I have something in writing later when the agent comes back after it's accepted and their broker's now seen it to say, I gave you the opportunity to make sure that this is what you wanted to present, right? But if you know it's blank, say something, confirm.
Our job when we represent sellers is to represent the seller at the highest level. And so when there's something that doesn't make sense, you don't keep quiet about it. You got to figure that out, right? You got to go back to this. So I think it's interesting that it seems like we're all in agreement that we wouldn't want to accept an offer that had 0 due diligence days. There's too much liability.
We wouldn't want to recommend to the seller, but the seller, again, would.
I would rather have one day at least to have something.
Something, right? Yeah. So good. That was basically my advice was we'd like the seller to allow the buyers to have some sort of due diligence period. Let me be clear. The due diligence period isn't only for home inspection. There's lots of other things that could happen during the due diligence period. I mean, I've worked with clients that are super sensitive to crime, super sensitive specifically to pedophiles, and you can look that up. And then they wanted time during their due diligence period to make sure they could do that research. My example was, what if the buyer does ask for no due diligence? Yeah. The seller accepts that and they do it because it's a hot market and that's what they're going to say it took to get the offer accepted. 2 years down the road, we're in court because the next door neighbor was a pedophile and their daughter is now reporting things not so well at home anymore. And the guy says, well, we had to write the offer because the listing agent said that they had 14 other offers and it was the only way we get the offer accepted. Yep. Then what's the attorney going to do at that point? Yeah. Oh, well, let's go have a chat with the listing agent because guess what? They've got money and we can get some money from. So look, it's about mitigation of liability. That's it.
You can use earnest money the same way. You can go off of the due diligence and go to earnest money because that's my risk in the game. I could release earnest money immediately if I really wanted to be a strong offer. All of these things are possible.
Well, if you've got no loan contingency, no due diligence,
you already have.
You've already released the MD, right? I mean, essentially, you just haven't handed the money over. Yep. So I think the point is that we're going to be in a hot market for a while. That's my opinion. I've said that before. I'm seeing multiple offers on multiple properties at a time, and I would ask you, please don't ever ask for no due diligence period. I don't think that's safe for the buyer, the seller, the buyer's agent, the listing agent, the brokerage. I think it's just a bad approach. There are other ways to write strong
closing
offers.
Costs.
Closing costs.
Don't write an offer where you ask for closing costs and you wrote it, below list and there's activity. You're not going to get accepted. You could offer to pay for some of the seller's costs in there.
Go the other direction,
but if you do that, you take for granted the listing agent's going to notice that. I would write in an email, hey, my client's going to pay the transfer tax and title insurance on this offer. I want to make sure that you note that. That's about a $3,000 to $4,000 benefit to the seller. Janet, you talked about it 2 weeks ago that was the reason you got an offer accepted because someone
Oh,
paid taxes.
well, and I had an agent. This has been last week, really busy week, and she called, and she doesn't call often, but she did call and say, my buyers really, 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 really want this house, and there are 17 offers. What can I do to get my offer accepted? I said, well, start with having a nice conversation with the listing agent about what the seller really wants. She said, I've already done that. And I said, okay, let's go to, do your buyers have money? She said, yeah, they're putting 20% down and they have more money. They're paying their own closing costs. I said, do they have more money? She's like, I think they do. I said, let's start with paying the entire escrow fee. Let's pay some of the other piddly little costs. We didn't do big costs, we did little costs. And she did, and I told her not only on the little box who's paying for what, but on the blank lines on page 9 of the contract, write it in. Buyer will pay sellers, da-da-da-da-da. She came flying into my office, brought me a caramel macchiato the next day. Guess what? Her offer was accepted.
Makes a difference. Last thing I had on my list is that with this hot market, we've had a lot of appraisals not come in. And we're talking about some that are as much as $50,000 on a $300,000 property. And so I want to reiterate again, because we talked about it about a month ago, that as the buyer's agent, you have a fiduciary duty to make sure that your client understands the comps that surround the property, because you have access to that information and it's part of reasonable skill and care. And so before you write an offer, you should be at least providing the client with some fodder or some information around, hey, I need to let you know there's no comps that justify this price, except for people coming from California. Because that's all I hear is someone from California is going to pay for it, right? And they do. They come over and they'll write the offer as high as they can go, but then the appraiser comes in and says it's not worth that.
Well, they're buying twice as much house for half as much money, and it makes sense for them to do that.
And it's not their money; it's the lender's money that they're getting anyway, so they don't care. And so the whole point is that if I am representing that buyer correctly, I would have provided them with comps. I would have had the conversation that yes, we'll write the offer, but if it doesn't go through, you're going to have paid for that appraisal. You're going to have paid for that home inspection. You're going to have risked your earnest money, and the deal may not come together. I need you to understand that going into it. By the way, my broker's a stickler. Will you just confirm that you got this comps and this information by email? I mean, at least so you have something. And we've had agents call the listing agent and say, can you share the comps you used to get this value? And the email that came back was, well, I don't know. I didn't have any.
Yeah.
That's a conversation you have up front.
That's just what my seller wanted to sell it for.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And so the other question is, what can I do to help influence the appraiser? And I think the whole point is, if you know the comps aren't going to come in and you know that this is the nicest house in the neighborhood, how have you proved it? Have you gotten an actual printout from the seller of all the upgrades that they've done? Have you actually gone out of the marketplace to find some comps that do make sense that you put in a packet to provide to them? Those things will actually give them the ammunition they need to bring in the appraisal. And I think that's what a good agent who wants to sell the house will do.
And here's what I'll tell you. It's easier to do this on the initial appraisal than it is to challenge the appraisal. Anytime you go back and challenge an appraisal, it just goes to a bad place. Like, nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be... So very rarely do I see challenged appraisals change. They usually come back and go, no, we're good at what we're at. So if you're going to do the work and you're going to be providing additional information that the appraiser probably doesn't know, you need to do this during the initial appraisal time.
And it's just justification, right?
Just FYI, I think you should know this. That's all.
For sure.
So with our new construction appraisers, they always go to the sales office, and we've kind of teed up the sales agents there to have that pending, recent close. Not all of that information is on MLS, and so we've also told that to our listing agents as well. Pull the lockbox off, or whatever it is that you guys do that hides the key, and then we always put the listing agent as a contact so that they know that the appraiser is about ready to schedule the appointment. And if they're ever concerned, they usually show up with this pending list. Hey, let me let you in the door. Here's the list of comps that I came up with, or what recently sold to come up with this value. It's to prepare that agent, or prepare the appraiser basically for that information.
I think the other thing, now, I don't know that everyone's going to do this, but if I go into a neighborhood and I see contingent properties that are in contract, and I pick up the phone and I call the listing agent, I start asking questions. Now, technically, I'm not a part of that transaction, but if I picked up the phone and I just asked questions, And I said, have you gone through the appraisal yet? And they say, yes. And I say, how did it go? And they're like, it was amazing. It actually appraised over. That would be great to know if I'm trying to justify my home appraisal. But again, people will share that sometimes and sometimes they won't. But at least I know it and I can provide that info to the appraiser to help justify it.
It's worth a shot.
Can I ask one thing on the appraisal? So we are actually getting all of our California borrowers who are putting a ton of money down with high credit scores. We're getting what we call the appraisal waivers. And so we're throwing that out to our client, and then it goes, to the obviously to the realtor first, our buyer's agent, to say, hey, we just got an appraisal waiver. Do you want us to proceed? Obviously we ask the buyer if they want to proceed, but the agent is, in the cases that we've done this, are like, well, I don't know what to do because it's new, right? Yeah. What do you mean you don't want to get an appraisal? I'm like, we don't need one. He's putting a lot of money down, great credit scores.
That is massive.
So what do they do?
So the whole, in a lot of high rises, believe it or not, we've seen this where they actually had 50% financing where they would buy a property, put that much down, and they didn't need an appraisal to justify it. So that means that all of us are writing offers, and my client, because of their credit score and their income, can actually waive the appraisal. I've just taken that off the table. And so all of you are fighting for value, and ours doesn't matter. We'll pay whatever our client's willing to pay for that home. Why would you ever accept any of these offers when I have that in mind, right? That's huge. And I think that's the point of having a conversation with the lender beforehand and knowing about it.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that that's happening, right? I mean, the one that we closed yesterday was an appraisal waiver. We didn't do an appraisal on that one. Another one we closed last week was an appraisal waiver. We didn't do an appraisal on that one. The buyers decided they didn't want to do it. So just know that that's happening quite a bit. It's based on age of the home. Like one of the ones that we sold, the home's only 3 years old. And so they didn't need an appraisal because of the age of the home. Some is because people are putting a ton of money down.
Yep.
And so there's lots of reasons why these appraisal waivers are happening. And I'm seeing a lot of them actually. So know that that's going to happen.
Janet, you had one other point that was a great one of the general membership meeting. So you want to talk about that?
Two.
You have two, yeah. See.
Okay, first one.
You've had your chance.
Tomorrow we're having something we've never done before. It's a CE in-class virtual CE class. Vanina will be teaching the class. It's on advertising laws. It's a law and legislative law class, and they are hard to find. So if your license is coming up for renewal and you need LLL, you better get in this class. So here's the way it's going to work. You can do it from home on your Zoom. She will be broadcasting actually from the Southwest office, or you can show up at the office with real people around, social distancing, come in with masks, blah, blah, blah. And we'll watch it on the big screen. Starts at 10 o'clock. You must register today. And I would almost say try and register by noon, because if you are in an office, Prosperity Lending, right?
Yes.
We'll be delivering box lunches since we'll be going through the lunch hour.
Wait.
Yeah.
But I just want to double check. And we need to know how many people are going to be in the offices. So she's not going to bring 20 box lunches to Summerlin if I'm the only person there taking the CE class. So please let us know. You must go online. It's on Agents of Signature, the link, register. And then you might also do you want somebody to call from Prosperity to say, I'm going to be in the office?
Sure.
Well, who?
Well, I'll be here.
Well, what about people at Summerlin, people in Green Valley?
We can have somebody in each of the offices. Tony will be in Summerlin.
All right, so if you're in Summerlin, contact Tony. If you're in Green Valley, contact Myra and let them know I'm going to be in there. I want a box lunch. That is tomorrow, so RSVP.
You do need to be in the class, though.
Yeah, and each class will have a monitor. Standard CE rules apply. I'll be the monitor. If you're on your cell phone, I'm going to take it away from you.
She must have a lot of them by now.
Go to Green Valley.
Yeah, I noticed Todd's been on his phone the whole time.
He's still commenting.
He's monitoring comments.
I have a question from somebody, an agent of ours.
Okay, one more thing. I'm sorry it has to happen this way, but the LVR General Membership Luncheon is going to have to be virtual. It'd be on October the 7th, starting at about 11:30. And the guest speaker for the General Membership Luncheon is Satima Gali. Now,
Nope.
yes, it is.
No, it's a Temanali.
Well, him too. And
Also known as.
also known
That
as,
guy.
The
you know,
Rock.
Shelley
His
talked
twin.
about going through Shield Maiden. Brandon's been through the warrior side of it.
I thought she was going to say shield maiden.
And
It would've been
if
better.
you have been with Signature for a while, we all gathered, hundreds of us, at Dragon Ridge a couple of years ago to see a very dynamic, energetic speaker. We've had him here. And then after the general membership luncheon, there will be a free CE class from 1 to 4 on agency taught by J.C. Melvin and Julie Youngblood, both very dynamic, high energy instructors. So there's a chance in the next 2 weeks for you to get 6 hours of free CE. So go for it.
There you go.
So the luncheon in October, what's for lunch?
Whatever you provide.
I thought Shelley would be dropping
No.
off box lunches or something.
No,
That
but
is
Tim will
not-
take one in Elie on. So what was the question?
So the question is, can a buyer waive the 5-day CIC contingency and just accept them without any ability to back out?
They can't waive them because it's in state law, but they could always accept them.
And say, let's close. I accepted it. Got it 5 minutes ago. Let's close.
Just like
They
you
can
can't
do that.
waive your right to the CIC package because you can't waive your right to the law, but you could, accept a written paper. It's their choice.
Okay,
There you go.
hope that answers this question.
All right, last thing I got is I met with associate counsel this morning. Talked about some things, and one of the things they said is they're all zoomed out. They're tired of the Zoom meetings. They're tired of the online trainings all the time. So they wanted the opportunity to be able to come into the office and attend some of these, similar to what we did last week with you when you did your training. So
Great.
going forward, we're going to do as many live trainings, and the sales meetings will now be even more live than they are now. You must RSVP because we still have to take precautions. We still have to have social distancing and be set up for it. But we're going to start that next week with the sales meeting. So if you want to come in, there'll be a link to sign up, and you can start coming into the sales meeting. We got a few people here now, but we're going to open it up a little bit more and then do as many trainings as we can that way as well.
Isn't next week broadcast because of legislative?
It'll be live.
It'll
Don't
be
worry,
live.
you'll be fine.
Okie dokie. So I will say I will just say we have 8 beautiful people here this morning.
So don't forget, again,
Count.
we need you to vote for
Fast.
Brandon and Elie. We need you to go on and vote right now. Don't wait. Do it now while the email's fresh. And let's get Brandon elected and Elie elected. It'd be awesome.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Get
Thanks,
rid of the
everyone.
drama.